Aloha, this is Reverend Tim Lytle from Unity Church of Hawaii here in Honolulu, Hawaii. Welcome to our YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us. We have wonderful services and videos and messages. We're so grateful to stand with you in faith so that you manifest the highest and best in your life, because we know where you are, God is. All of God is fully present there. So enjoy our services, enjoy the message, and thank you for joining us. Yesterday morning, I had the opportunity to sleep in just a little bit. Sleeping in for me means sleeping in till 7:30 in the morning. And so I got up, I felt good, felt relaxed. I thought, I'm just going to go pray on the lanai for a while, and felt this wonderful connection with Spirit, knowing all was good. And the voice of Spirit said to me, check your phone. Now, whenever Spirit says, check your phone, I always go, really? I want to make sure, because I never know what's going to be waiting for me on the phone. And so I go to my phone, and I open my phone. And, you know, where you would normally see something like flash flood warning or amber alert or something like that, was a message that said, now, I'm sitting here in a peaceful state on my lanai, looking at Tantalus, beautiful sky behind it. Ballistic missile threat incoming. Seek shelter immediately. This is not a drill. And I'm looking at this message. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. And trying to see, okay, what time did the message come and what time is it now? There haven't been any sirens, and I'm looking at this beautiful view, and I'm wondering, is this the last thing that honestly, will this be the last thing I will see this life? I want to take it in. It's beautiful. This may be my last moment. And seek shelter where? I mean, most of us live in high rises. I live in a high rise. We live in a high rise, and it's like a shelter. And so, I was thinking of parking garage. I could just imagine all the rubble that could come down, I'm going to tell something that'll help you to know where I'm from in a historical context. I grew up in the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Do you remember the Cuban Missile Crisis? And as kids, we would roll up in balls, and we would get underneath our desk, or we would get out in the hallway. And I remember, I would be sitting there, like this, and I'm thinking, if a bomb hits, is this really going to help? It just seemed like a more convenient position to kiss a particular piece of my anatomy goodbye. Right? And then I hear, and pardon me, I appreciate all of our government officials, and I've worked with emergency services in Wichita, Kansas before, and emergency preparedness and going through drills and all of that. And so I honor all of our government, but when I heard that, we pressed the wrong button, and I was like, so is there like a button for cat in tree, amber alert, flash flood, ballistic missile? Let's see, which one? I was trying to wrap my head around all this, and pardon the humor, that's how I deal with it. And so, I go online and I'm looking for some sort of verification. Someone please tell me. And Tulsi Gabbard had tweeted on Twitter, that Hawaii, we are not in danger. This is a false alarm. And at that moment, I'm thinking, wow, some of the most important news of the day is coming through Twitter. So, in any case, it gave me this opportunity to reflect on what is really, truly important in my life. Where do I stand? What is the basis of my life, and what do I stand in? And I thought of my family, my friends, the people I love, and I thought, wow, yeah, they so make life worth living. And I went into this inner presence. And I don't know if you know what I mean by this inner presence. Like this presence of peace, this presence of God within, this presence that was never born and will never die, this presence that is always, always, always in love, always in this deep life intelligence, always grounded and connected with people everywhere. And that's where I went. And I thought of a statement of Martin Luther, the German leader of the Protestant Reformation, who was under lots of persecution and people questioning him and persecuting him. And he said, "Here I stand, so help me God." And so on my lanai, I thought, well, God, here I sit. And whether my body is about to be obliterated in the smithereens, I know that the real me can never be destroyed. I know that which is real, which is true, which is enduring, can never be destroyed or diminished in any way. And I ground myself in that principle and in that truth and operate from that. And there was this deep sense of calm. A deep sense of calm. And yesterday was real interesting because there was no moment at which I took anything for granted. It could be an eyelash, it could be a flower, it could be a child, it could be a dog, it could be a fuzz bunny on the floor. I was grateful for everything. And I thought, you know, if we are living in truth, we can experience gratitude at all moments. And if we're standing in that truth, there's nothing we can be afraid of. Some of you know that spiritually and through literature, Mahatma Gandhi is a mentor for me, and also Martin Luther King Jr. Gandhi had to deal with the fear of death so that he could be completely grounded in truth no matter what came his way. No matter how circumstances look, he was grounded in the truth, knowing what he lived for, knowing the truth, because the truth cannot be defeated. It can't be. Everything else is illusion. Martin Luther King Jr. grounded himself in that truth. He saw a divide in our country and in our world. A divide that was based on color, that was based on culture, that was based on race, that was based on religion and faith. We still see some divides in our day, don't we? Humanity is still trying to figure this out. One time, a theologian, G.K. Chesterton, was asked, "Do you think the day of Christianity has passed?" And he said, "I don't know. It hasn't really been tried yet." The principles of Jesus, the principles of being grounded in truth, the principles of living the truth and knowing oneness with all people and equality of all people is still something we're working out. We're still working out getting the message. And Martin Luther King Jr. stood in that truth. A minister, the son of a minister, originally born with the name Michael. And when he and his family went on a trip to Germany, his father and he changed their name to Martin Luther. And so, they were grounded in this truth, a truth that set them free from any fear of what could come their way. There had been death threats. There had been attempts to kill him. He had been beaten. He had been thrown in jail. He is a good image of standing in the faith, and that's the power of this month, is standing in the faith. 50 years ago, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. was giving his final speech. He didn't know it was his final speech. It was in Memphis. It was on April 3rd. And he was there to help with workers' rights and for the rights of sanitation workers. And so he was speaking there, and I'd like for us to hear, by way of Brother Ralph, to hear from Martin Luther King Jr., April 3rd, 1968, the day before his assassination.
Now I want to thank God once more for allowing me to be here with you. You know, several years ago, I was in New York City autographing a book, the first book I had ever written. And while sitting there autographing books, a demented black woman came up. The only question I heard from her was, "Are you Martin Luther King?" And as I was looking down, writing, I said, "Yes." The next minute, I felt something beating on my chest. Before I knew it, I had been stabbed by this demented woman. I was rushed to Harlem Hospital, and it was a dark Saturday afternoon, and that blade had gone through. The x-rays revealed the tip of the blade was on the edge of my aorta, the main artery. And once that's punctured, you're drowned in your own blood. That's the end of you. It came out in the New York Times the next day that if I had merely sneezed, I would have died. Well, about 4 days later, they allowed me, after the operation, after my chest had been opened and the blade had been taken out, they allowed me to read some of the mail that had come in from around the world and across the states. I read a few, but one of them I will never forget. I received letters from the vice president and the president, but I've forgotten those translations. I received a visit and a letter from the governor of New York, but I've forgotten what that letter said. But there was another letter that came from a little girl, a young girl. She was a student at White Plains High School. And I looked at that letter, and I'll never forget it. It said simply, "Dear Dr. King, I am a 9th grade student at the White Plains High School." She said, "And while it shouldn't matter, I'm a white girl." I read in the paper of your misfortune and of your suffering. And I read that if you had sneezed, you would have died. And I'm simply writing to you to say, I'm so happy that you didn't sneeze. And I want you to know tonight, and I say to you tonight, that I too am happy that I didn't sneeze. Because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1960 when students all over the South were staging sit-ins at lunch counters. And I realized that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up. They were standing up for the best in the American dream and taking the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and in the Constitution. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1961 when we decided to ride for freedom and ended segregation in interstate travel. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1961 to take another ride for freedom. And if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1962 when Negroes in Albany, Georgia decided to straighten up their backs. When men and women straighten up their backs, they are going somewhere. A man can't ride your back unless it's bent. If I had sneezed, friends, if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been here in 1963 when black people from Birmingham, Alabama, aroused the conscience of this nation. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had a chance later that year to try to tell America about a dream I had had. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been in Selma to see the great movement there. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been in Memphis to see a community rally around brothers and sisters who were suffering. And then I got to Memphis, and some began to say the threats that were out there, or what would happen to me by some of our sick white brothers. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But that really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. And I want you to know tonight, I may not get there with you, but as a people, we will get to the promised land. And so tonight, I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
That's standing in faith. Whatever you're facing in your life, stand in faith. Whatever disparities or injustice or inequality you see in this world, stand in faith. Whenever you're tempted to be afraid, stand in faith. Whenever you're tempted to give up, stand in faith. Whenever you think that it's impossible to go forward, stand in faith. There is a tradition of ringing the bells because Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Let freedom ring." And so every year we ring the bells. And so Bishop Eric Matsumoto and our chime player, Bill, will now ring the bells for freedom.